I can't reproduce Matthew Hussey's exact voice or style, but I can write this with the asterisk asterisk, same broad qualities you're after asterisk asterisk, psychologically grounded, intellectually engaging, direct, conversational, and motivational. There is something deeply powerful about a woman who doesn't need to be chosen in order to feel valuable. And I want you to really understand the difference here, because this is not about pretending you don't care. It's not about acting cold. It's not about ignoring a man's messages for 6 hours because you want him to wonder where you are. It's not about manufactured mystery. Those things are strategies. What we're talking about is something much deeper. A woman who has built a sense of self that does not collapse when somebody else's attention disappears. And psychologically, that is incredibly powerful, because think about what happens when you meet someone who desperately needs your approval. You can feel it. They may be smiling, laughing at everything you say, agreeing with everything you believe, constantly checking whether you're pleased with them. And although that person may be perfectly kind and attractive, there is often a subtle pressure underneath the interaction. You can feel that your approval has become emotionally important to them. Now compare that with someone who genuinely likes you but doesn't need you to validate her existence. She can enjoy your attention without becoming dependent on it. She can be excited to hear from you without spending the entire day staring at her phone. She can appreciate a compliment without needing 10 more. She can want the relationship without abandoning herself in order to secure it. And that difference can be profoundly disarming, because suddenly you are not dealing with someone who is asking, consciously or unconsciously, what do I need to do to make you choose me? You are dealing with someone who is asking a completely different question. Are we actually right for each other? That is a psychological shift. And it changes everything. When you are desperate to be chosen, you put the other person in the position of judge. They become the person who determines your worth. Their text becomes evidence. Their silence becomes rejection. Their affection becomes reassurance. Their distance becomes a threat. But when you have a strong sense of self, you stop treating another person's behavior as a verdict on your value. You begin observing rather than obsessing. You begin asking, how does this person make me feel? Are their actions consistent? Do they respect me? Do they communicate clearly? Do our values align? That is not arrogance. That is emotional adulthood. And this is one of the reasons independence can be so attractive. Not because men supposedly want women who are difficult or unavailable, but because genuine independence signals something important: emotional stability. You are not asking someone else to regulate your entire emotional world, and that creates freedom inside a relationship. Think about it. The healthiest attraction is not built around two people desperately trying to possess each other. It is built around two people who have the ability to walk away but continually choose to stay. That distinction matters. Because if I stay with you only because I am terrified of losing you, you can never be completely certain that my love is freely given. But if I have a full life, my own identity, my own standards, my own friendships, my own ambitions, and I still choose you, there is something qualitatively different about that choice. It carries weight, and this is where many women misunderstand what it means to be independent. Independence does not mean never needing anyone. We are human beings. We need connection. We need intimacy. We need affection. We need people. The goal is not to become so self-sufficient that you never allow anyone to matter. The goal is to make sure that someone mattering to you does not mean they control your sense of worth. There is a huge difference between dependence and interdependence. Dependence says, without you, I am nothing. Interdependence says, I can stand on my own, and I choose to build something with you. One is rooted in fear. The other is rooted in strength. And when a man encounters a woman who operates from that second position, something interesting can happen. He may realize that his usual methods of gaining attention don't have the same effect. Perhaps he expects her to chase when he pulls away. She doesn't. Perhaps he expects her to accept inconsistent behavior because she likes him. She doesn't. Perhaps he expects a compliment to be enough to erase weeks of poor communication. It isn't. And suddenly, he has to engage with her as a whole person rather than simply as someone seeking his approval. That can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes attraction becomes more meaningful precisely because it forces us to confront ourselves. A woman with standards creates a mirror. If she calmly says, I like you, but that doesn't work for me, she is not punishing him. She is revealing the structure of her self-respect. And that can be incredibly compelling because it tells him something about the kind of relationship she is capable of having. She is saying, you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be intentional. There is a profound philosophical idea underneath this. We teach people how to experience us by what we repeatedly tolerate. If you repeatedly accept inconsistency, you communicate that inconsistency is compatible with access to you. If you repeatedly abandon your boundaries because you are afraid someone will leave, you teach yourself that keeping another person is more important than keeping yourself. And eventually that creates resentment. You begin thinking, after everything I've done for him, why doesn't he appreciate me? But sometimes the problem isn't that you gave too much love. The problem is that you gave too much of yourself without requiring reciprocity. Love is not supposed to be a negotiation where you continuously sacrifice your dignity in exchange for somebody staying. And this is why the woman who is not like other women is not necessarily the woman who looks different, dresses differently, or behaves mysteriously. She may look completely ordinary. What distinguishes her is the internal relationship she has with herself. She doesn't constantly compare herself with other women. She doesn't see every attractive woman as competition. She doesn't walk into a room wondering, how do I become the most desirable person here? She walks into the room knowing that her value is not determined by winning a competition nobody asked her to enter. And ironically, that is often when she becomes more noticeable because confidence without performance is rare. There is something different about a woman who doesn't need to announce her standards because her behavior demonstrates them. She doesn't have to say, I respect myself. You can see it in what she accepts. She doesn't have to say, I'm confident. You can see it in how she handles rejection. She doesn't have to say, I'm independent. You can see it in the fact that her entire emotional universe doesn't revolve around whether one person texts her back. And perhaps most importantly, she doesn't confuse being wanted with being valued. Those are not the same thing. Someone can want access to you without being capable of loving you well. Someone can be attracted to you without respecting you. Someone can miss you without being prepared to build something healthy with you. That is why your goal should never simply be to become the woman a man is afraid to lose. Your goal is to become the woman who refuses to lose herself. Because when you stop negotiating against yourself, something changes. You become calmer, you become clearer. You stop chasing certainty from people who are giving you confusion. You stop interpreting crumbs as promises. You stop asking, "What can I do to make him choose me?" And you start asking the question that protects your future. Is the way he is choosing me actually worthy of me? That is where your power lies. Not in being difficult, not in playing games, not in making someone jealous, but in knowing that your life has meaning before they arrive, while they are there, and even if they leave. And when a man recognizes that your affection is a choice rather than a plea, he experiences something fundamentally different. He knows that your presence is valuable because you are capable of living without his approval. And that is the kind of woman people remember, not because she demanded to be remembered, but because she never betrayed herself just to be chosen. And once you understand that your independence is not about becoming cold, the next question becomes even more interesting. What does it actually mean to interact with someone from a place of emotional strength? Because you can be independent and still play games. You can have boundaries and still use them as weapons. You can tell yourself you have standards while secretly using those standards to punish someone for not behaving exactly as you want. So, the real difference is not simply that you have boundaries. It is the way you handle another person while maintaining them. And this is where a woman can become profoundly different. She doesn't manipulate attention, she communicates. She doesn't create jealousy to test whether he cares. She observes whether he naturally invests. She doesn't disappear because she wants him to panic. She steps back when the relationship is no longer reciprocal. Those may look like similar behaviors from the outside, but psychologically, they come from completely different places. One comes from fear, the other comes from self-respect, and people can usually feel the difference. Think about how exhausting modern dating can become when everything turns into a strategy. How long should I wait before replying? Should I double text? Should I tell him I miss him? Will I look too interested if I compliment him? What should I post so he notices me? You can spend so much energy trying to manage another person's perception of you that you eventually stop having an authentic interaction with them. You are no longer relating, you are performing. And performance creates a strange problem. Even if the other person becomes attracted to you, you are left wondering whether they are attracted to you or to the version of you that you carefully constructed. That is not intimacy, that is marketing. And genuine connection requires something much more courageous: authenticity. A woman who stands out understands that she doesn't have to manufacture emotional uncertainty to create attraction. She can be warm, she can flirt, she can show enthusiasm, she can say, "I had a great time with you." She can even say, "I miss you." And none of those things make her weak. Because vulnerability is not weakness when it is freely chosen. The weakness comes when you use vulnerability as a transaction. I told him how much I care, so now he owes me commitment. I gave him everything, so he should finally appreciate me. I was vulnerable with him, so he has to give me the outcome I want. That is where emotional expression becomes emotional bargaining. A mature woman understands something different. She says what is true because it is true, not because she is trying to control the response. And that creates an extraordinary kind of emotional freedom. Imagine telling someone, I really like you, and then being capable of hearing, I don't feel the same way, without deciding that your entire identity has been rejected. That takes strength because most people don't fear honesty itself. They fear what honesty might cost them. They are afraid that if they reveal their feelings, they will lose leverage. But what if the goal was never to have leverage? What if the goal was to discover the truth that changes dating completely? You stop thinking, how can I make him want me? And you start thinking, who is he when I am honest about what I want? That is a much more intelligent question. Because relationships are not built by successfully controlling someone's emotions. They are built by discovering whether two people can meet each other honestly. And this is why a woman who communicates clearly can sometimes be more powerful than a woman who constantly keeps a man guessing. She says, I enjoy spending time with you, but I'm looking for something intentional. She doesn't issue an ultimatum. She provides information, then she watches what happens. If he wants the same thing, his actions will gradually reveal that. If he doesn't, she has learned something valuable. There is no need for a dramatic confrontation, no need for revenge, no need for passive-aggressive posts, no need to convince him that he made the wrong decision. She simply accepts reality. And there is something incredibly attractive about someone who can face reality without needing to distort it. Because one of the most emotionally mature things you can say is, this is what I want. Is that something you genuinely want to, not, how do I get you to want it? That distinction is enormous. The first is self-respect, the second is control. And if you understand this, you begin to see why emotional maturity can be so disarming. A man may be accustomed to women responding to uncertainty by trying harder, more messages, more attention, more reassurance, more effort. But when he encounters a woman who responds to uncertainty with observation, something changes. She doesn't immediately increase her investment to compensate for his lack of investment. She allows reality to speak. If he becomes distant, she doesn't automatically chase. If he becomes inconsistent, she doesn't create a dramatic test. If he stops making effort, she doesn't suddenly double hers. She simply notices, and noticing is powerful. Because the truth is often visible long before we are emotionally ready to accept it, you don't always need another conversation. Sometimes you need to observe the pattern. One missed message means very little. A consistent pattern of disappearing means something. One bad date means very little. Repeated disrespect means something. One moment of uncertainty means very little. Months of ambiguity means something. A mature woman doesn't judge people by isolated moments. She looks at patterns, and that is one of the clearest signs that someone has developed emotional intelligence. She doesn't let chemistry override evidence. Because chemistry can tell you that you are attracted to someone, it cannot tell you whether that person is capable of giving you a healthy relationship. Those are different questions. You can have extraordinary chemistry with someone who is emotionally unavailable. You can feel an almost magnetic connection with someone who cannot communicate. You can experience intense attraction towards someone who is completely wrong for the life you want. And this is where women sometimes confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. They are not the same. Intensity can come from uncertainty. Depth comes from consistency. Intensity can come from anxiety. Depth comes from safety. Intensity can come from wondering, does he want me? Depth comes from knowing, we want each other and we are both behaving accordingly. That is why the woman who doesn't play games can actually become more memorable. She isn't constantly stimulating a man's anxiety. She's offering something far rarer, clarity, and clarity has a strange effect. It forces people to confront themselves. If you are straightforward about what you want, the other person has to decide what they want. If you refuse to participate in emotional games, they have to either meet you authentically or leave. And that can shake someone, not because you are manipulating them, but because you are no longer giving them a place to hide. There is another important distinction here. A woman who is emotionally mature does not confuse kindness with unlimited access. She can be compassionate without becoming available to everyone. She can understand someone's past without accepting their mistreatment. She can recognize that someone is struggling without volunteering to become their therapist. She can forgive without automatically restoring the same level of trust. This is what healthy boundaries actually look like. They aren't walls, they're doors with handles. You decide who gets access, when, and under what conditions. And that is profoundly different from becoming emotionally closed, because the woman who is truly secure doesn't say, "I don't need anybody." She says, "I need connection, but I won't sacrifice myself to obtain it." That sentence captures the entire philosophy. You can love deeply without abandoning yourself. You can give without overgiving. You can care without chasing. You can be vulnerable without begging. You can be affectionate without becoming dependent. And when you operate from that place, you become much harder to manipulate, not because you are suspicious of everyone, but because you are no longer desperate for a particular outcome. You can accept what is, you can walk away from what isn't, and perhaps most importantly, you can remain yourself while loving somebody else. That is the real difference. The woman who stands out isn't necessarily the woman who makes a man work the hardest. She's the woman who makes honesty easier than games. She doesn't ask, "How can I keep him interested?" She asks, "Can we create something where interest is naturally reciprocated?" She doesn't wonder how to make herself more desirable. She asks whether the person in front of her is capable of recognizing and respecting what she already brings. And when you stop trying to manipulate attraction and start cultivating authentic connection, something extraordinary happens. You no longer need to chase someone's attention. You simply give them the opportunity to meet you, and if they do, you build. If they don't, you release. Because the purpose of boundaries, communication, and emotional maturity isn't to make someone afraid of losing you. It's to make sure you never have to lose yourself in order to keep them. And this brings us to perhaps the deepest reason a woman can become unforgettable to a man. It isn't simply that she looks different. It isn't that she dresses differently. It isn't even that she gives him a different kind of attention. It is that somehow, when he is around her, he begins to experience a different version of himself. And that is a much deeper level of attraction, because human beings don't simply become attached to how another person makes them feel about that person. We become attached to how we feel about ourselves in their presence. Think about the people you remember most strongly in your own life. Often, they aren't the people who gave you the most compliments. They are the people around whom you felt more alive, more understood, more courageous, more interesting, more honest. Maybe you could talk to them about things you normally kept hidden. Maybe you found yourself laughing more. Maybe they challenged you to think differently. Maybe their belief in you made you believe in yourself for a moment. That is emotional impact. And when a woman creates that kind of environment, she stops being merely someone a man finds attractive. She becomes associated with a version of himself that he values. That is powerful. But there is an important distinction here. You are not responsible for making a man become his best self. You are not his therapist. You are not his mother. You are not his life coach, and you certainly shouldn't build your identity around rescuing someone from themselves. The deeper point is that your presence can reveal something. You can create a relationship in which another person feels safe enough to be honest, challenged enough to grow, and respected enough to become more fully themselves. And the right person will appreciate that. One of the most powerful things a woman can offer is not endless validation. It is accurate attention. There is a difference. Validation says, everything you do is wonderful. Accurate attention says, I see what you're capable of, and I believe you can live up to it. Those are not the same thing. Imagine a man who tells you about a goal he has had for years, but keeps postponing. You could simply say, I'm sure you'll do it someday. That sounds supportive, but another response might be, you clearly care about this. Why do you keep delaying it? That question is more challenging. It also communicates something deeper. I take you seriously enough to expect something from you, and sometimes that is far more meaningful than praise. Because people don't only want to be admired, they want to be seen. And being seen means being recognized as a complete person, not just for your strengths, but for your contradictions, your fears, your potential, and your blind spots. A woman who can see a man clearly without idolizing him creates a very different experience. She doesn't put him on a pedestal. She doesn't constantly tell him he's perfect. She can admire him while still recognizing where he needs to grow. And that can be strangely disarming, because when someone genuinely sees you, you can no longer hide behind the performance. You have to become more honest. This is one reason emotional intimacy can feel frightening. Physical attraction is often easier. You can flirt, you can impress, you can dress well, you can say the right things. But emotional intimacy asks a much harder question. Who are you when you don't have to perform? And a woman who creates space for that question can become deeply significant. Not because she manipulates vulnerability, but because she doesn't punish it. A man might tell her something he has never told many people. Instead of immediately judging him, she listens. But listening doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It means being present enough to understand before responding. That kind of emotional presence is rare, and rarity creates significance. There is also something fascinating about being challenged by someone you respect. If you don't care about someone's opinion, their criticism doesn't matter. But if you deeply respect them, their perspective can reach places other people's opinions cannot. So when a woman has standards and a man respects those standards, her approval becomes meaningful, not because she withholds it strategically, but because she doesn't give it away cheaply. If she says, I'm proud of you, it means something. If she says, I don't think you're treating this situation fairly, it means something. If she says, I know you're capable of more, it means something. Why? Because he knows she isn't simply telling him what he wants to hear. She is telling him what she actually sees. That is the difference between flattery and respect. Flattery tries to make someone feel good. Respect tells the truth because you believe the person can handle it. And this is where a woman can become deeply influential without ever trying to control a man. She doesn't manipulate his behavior. She simply refuses to participate in a version of the relationship that is beneath her values. That distinction matters. Suppose a man is inconsistent. A woman who is afraid of losing him may think, "How can I convince him to change?" She sends longer messages. She explains herself repeatedly. She tries to prove why the relationship could work. She becomes more accommodating. But a woman with self-respect may say something much simpler. "I like you, but this level of inconsistency doesn't work for me." And then she allows his behavior to answer. That is powerful because she is not trying to control the outcome. She is revealing the standard. The choice remains his. And that freedom is essential because you cannot love someone into becoming the person you need them to be. You can inspire, you can encourage, you can communicate, you can model healthy behavior, but ultimately they must choose growth themselves. And the healthiest relationships are built when both people make that choice willingly. This is also why the woman who stands out often has a life beyond the relationship. She has interests, curiosity, purpose, friendships, ambitions, things she cares about that have nothing to do with whether a man finds her attractive. And this creates something psychologically fascinating. Her relationship is part of her identity, but it isn't her entire identity. So when she spends time with him, she brings a whole person into the room. She isn't waiting for him to give her a life. She already has one, and that makes connection richer because she has experiences to share, ideas to discuss, stories to tell, dreams to pursue. She isn't simply asking, "Do you like me?" She's bringing something to the relationship and asking, "Can we build something meaningful together?" That is a completely different energy, and perhaps this is what truly shakes a man, not the fear that she might leave, but the realization that her life is already whole. Her affection is not desperation. Her attention is not dependency. Her presence is not guaranteed, and if he wants to be part of her world, he has to participate in creating something worthy of that place. This doesn't mean he has to constantly prove himself. Healthy love isn't an audition, but it does mean that both people have to contribute. Both have to communicate, both have to show up, both have to take responsibility, both have to choose each other repeatedly. And when that happens, something beautiful develops. You stop being two people trying to extract validation from one another. You become two people capable of expanding one another's lives. That is what real partnership can do. It doesn't make you smaller, it makes your world larger, and the most meaningful relationships often have exactly this quality. You don't think, "I need this person because without them I am incomplete." You think, "My life was meaningful before you, and somehow it has become even richer with you." That is love without possession, connection without dependency, intimacy without self-erasure. And if you want to be remembered, this is the lesson I want you to take with you. Stop trying so hard to become the woman a man will never forget. Instead, become the woman who is deeply present when she is there. Be the woman who listens, the woman who challenges with kindness, the woman who has standards without cruelty, the woman who can admire without idolizing, the woman who can love without disappearing into the relationship, the woman who can say, "I see you," while still saying, "And I see myself too." Because ultimately, the deepest attraction is not created when someone becomes obsessed with possessing you. It is created when two people recognize something rare in one another and understand that being together allows them to become more fully themselves. So don't make it your mission to shake him by becoming impossible to replace. Make it your mission to build a life, character, and presence that you never have to abandon for anyone.